You may believe that the safest item on your shelves is canned beans. But what if I told you that some of the most well-known brands in your cupboard have been connected to lawsuits, hospital stays, hidden allergies, and food recalls? More than 400,000 cans of beans have been removed from American retailers in the last 12 months alone because of contamination, strange objects, and labeling fraud. And before anyone became ill, there was no warning. This should chill you to the bone. There are still some of these brands that are quietly occupying your grocery aisle. No alert, no sticker. What the FDA refers to as a class, I recall level threat, is concealed by a simple label. Unreported soy in one brand's sweet-baked beans has the potential to kill an allergy sufferer. After people complained of burning in their throats, another is being sued. But it's only beans, isn't it? It's time for you to quit believing labels that look familiar. The 5 canned bean brands that you should absolutely stay away from are revealed today. But before we get right in, if you're worried about your health, click the subscribe button and turn on notifications because this is where we share the facts that no one talks about. And if you're with me, please let me know. In the comment field, put 1 if you're currently viewing and this video speaks to you. Type 0 otherwise, you are unaware of the significance of your voice, as well as the 2 that are still fit for consumption. Before your next dinner causes more harm than good, let's face the facts. Yellowstone is the top. Yellowstone has gotten remarkably adept at blending in with the background. The flavor offers comfort, the name seems reliable, and the label has a cozy appearance. However, the contents of that can might be something completely else. More than 4,500 boxes of Yellowstone brown sugar molasses baked beans were taken from store shelves in 23 states in May 2025. Why? Because they included unreported soy, a serious allergy that can suddenly trigger anaphylactic shock. There was no allergy alert or mention of soy on the label. It's just a neat-looking can that's available at supermarkets like Walmart and Kroger, just waiting for a food-sensitive person to try it. The catch is that this was not seen as a singular instance of contamination. It was categorized as the most serious level of the class I remember. This indicates that the product presented customers with a genuine and plausible risk. At the time, no formal illness reports had been filed. Therefore, either the damage had not yet occurred or people were injured without even realizing it. Now, consider this. How many homes keep canned beans on hand for ease of use? How many families believe that a product that is meant to be easy to use, safe and satisfying will last on the shelf? Like camouflage, Yellowstone made use of that trust. This was no coincidence. This was an oversight and accountability labeling failure. But there is more to the problem than just one brand. Due to gaps in federal inspection, these cans even made it to the market. Not all food safety inspections are proactive. Actually, a lot of recalls only occur when a third-party lab detects contamination or a consumer reports a reaction. The cans might be in thousands of houses by then. Recall notices in retailers are not required by the FDA. You don't have to be warned by retailers. Therefore, you may never find out if your can is among a hazardous batch. What about Yellowstone's producer's reaction? A generic news announcement in silence, a silent recall. No explanation of how the allergen entered, no dedication to process reform. Just another business hoping that it would pass before too many headlines are made. For this reason, canned food should be examined with the same level of care as fresh food. It's not always safe just because it's sealed. The following batch may not pass inspection just because it passed the first one. Additionally, just because it hasn't made headlines doesn't imply that people aren't getting sick from it. Let this serve as a wake-up call for you. Consider whether you're buying flavor or a phony sense of security the next time you see a sweet, sticky can of baked beans on sale. Yellowstone baked beans may appear innocuous. However, that label's reality is anything from charming. And regrettably, this is only the start. Because millions of American kitchens are home to the next brand we're going to reveal, and it may be concealing something even more sinister. Second place, good and gather. The only ingredients in a can should be beans, water, and sometimes salt. No one anticipates metal or plastic fragments into their meal. But with Good and Gather, the well-liked Target House brand that many Americans relied on to fill their pantries, that is precisely what happened. Target discreetly recalled almost 198,000 cans of Good and Gather cut green beans in the beginning of 2025. These were recalled due to potential foreign object contamination rather than some nebulous flavor concern. The recall was ultimately categorized as Class 2, which means that although it is not intended to be fatal, it may result in short-term or medically recoverable injury. You might break a tooth, to put it politely. Your gums could get cut. Something sharp could get into your mouth. It's terrifying how simple it is to overlook. The impacted cans had a best-if-used date of October 28, 2026, and were produced by a significant food supplier that was distributed throughout 21 states. There were dozens of shelf displays that matched the lot number displayed at the bottom. That flag would go unnoticed by many until it was too late. Now picture opening your cupboard, picking up the can at Target that cost just less than $2, and anticipating a standard side dish. Rather, you choke on something that shouldn't be in your food or bite down and feel something sharp. That is the deception. The anticipation of simple, clean beans was transformed into a dangerous game of roulette concealed behind a shiny label. Why did this get through? Because corporate systems place more faith in appearances than in reality. Audits may look at pictures rather than examine every can. Factories may only detect a small percentage of flaws, mix up processor equipment, and shed plastic underwear quality control. Additionally, individual consumers may never receive the notification of a recall. Retailers are not required by law to label every shelf. It's possible that the safe can in your cupboard is one of the harmful ones. Unfortunately, even though there were no confirmed casualties recorded during launch, the danger still exists. Inadvertent risk takers included elderly individuals, those with lung or digestive disorders, those with sensitive teeth, gum disease, or concealed vulnerabilities. That's the reality of a system that puts profit ahead of safety. It's not just scare tactics. Trust was betrayed by this brand. You purchased ease, they offered peril. They provided uncertainty, but you trusted the Target quality. That misalignment, it's not a bug. From the manufacturing floor to your countertop, there is a structural issue with the food chain. Therefore, the next time you pick up a can that says Good and Gather, stop, look at the lot number, feel the shape of the can, smell for the faintest hint of an off smell, and better yet, don't take a chance. Consider that designation as though it were a mistake, and then choose if you're willing to put your health at danger. Because the possibility of plastic in your food lurks beneath the promise of cheap and convenience. And no one ought to invite someone who betrays them to their table. We'll reveal another company that conceals risk in a product you believe to be innocuous next. Rosarita is number 3. Given that Rosarita has been a staple in pantries for decades, it may seem like a safe choice for refried beans. However, most people are unaware of the underlying issues that lay beneath that well-known name. Your perception of creamy bean goodness may be hiding something much darker. Rosarita's no-fat refried beans product is being sued for allegedly having hazardous amounts of ammonia, a substance your body never requested. According to the complaint, ammonia was added to the beans during processing or packaging, which resulted in symptoms including burning in the mouth and throat. Producers are facing charges of product responsibility, carelessness, and duty breach. It is really unnerving to think that a common side dish could cause a chemical response in your throat. But that's not all. Rosarita was recalled years ago due to tiny rocks discovered in its refried bean cans. These are foreign solid particles in your food, not labeling errors. Cans were returned by customers who wanted a refund and safety inspections. That marked the beginning of mistrust for many. Imagine now merging two very distinct but extremely real risks: chemical exposure and rock pollution. Let's consider the bigger picture. Many supermarkets sell Rosarita cans for about $1.50 to $2. Many families purchase them in large quantities because they think they're safe and reasonably priced. However, the price of chemical irritants ceases to be a benefit when the contents become unexpected, often consisting of rock shards. It turns into a danger. Why would a company take this action? Because there is potential for error, or worse, neglect, in the spaces between low inspection and cost-cutting packing shortcuts. Rather of completely recalling or revamping its procedure, the technique allows a brand to quietly settle lawsuits. By concentrating solely on microbiological testing, quality audits may overlook chemical residues. Upstream suppliers may exchange raw materials covertly. By shifting risks backward, the whole supply chain, from the bean farm to the canning facility to the shelf, allows customers to bear the consequences, as well as the knock-on impact. Rosarita's beans could be written off as a bad batch by some if they hurt or burn little. Others might experience chronic respiratory or intestinal irritation, alter their diets, or completely avoid canned foods. Budget-conscious communities can unwittingly accept it, putting up with a risk they never agreed to. Therefore, keep in mind that you can be playing with fire when you grab for that can of Rosarita refried beans, chemically, not figuratively. No fat, feel safe, clean light is the name. However, the assertion can conceal mistakes or chemical infiltration that no one wants to acknowledge. This is precisely why trustworthy brands require examination rather than faith, because the most recognizable foods might occasionally conceal the most unknown risks. The fourth brand, which appears to be a solid choice but is actually a microbiological time bomb, will be revealed in the next section. 4. Federal health experts linked a multi-state salmonella epidemic to deep brand sprouting beans in the middle of 2025. After laboratory testing revealed that the same strain of salmonella was causing illnesses in 10 states, sprouted mat and mung products were recalled. 11 illnesses have been confirmed, 4 hospital stays. Indeed, those who believed they were eating healthier food ended up at risk of contracting a serious infection. Things worsen. The lots that were marked were dispersed extensively. 1-pound bags of sprouted beans were available for purchase across the country at prices ranging from $3.50 to $4 per pack in many stores that sell frozen specialties that are ethnic or health conscious. Risk is increased by sprouting. Conditions that encourage bacteria are created by moisture warmth and densely packed seeds. Salmonella was discovered in several product lots through normal sampling, as confirmed by DEEP's recall notification. Genomic sequencing then connected the disease cases to the tainted samples. This isn't a guess. Science and consumer harm are colliding. Think about the vulnerable groups such as children under 5, elderly people, and people with weakened immune systems. For them, just one tainted bean might result in days of fever, dehydration, diarrhea, and potentially an ER visit. Even those in good health can have severe symptoms. The failure of this brand exposes more than one faulty shipment. It indicates flaws in the structure, quality control procedures for factory sanitation, supply chain supervision. How may tainted sprouting beans have escaped detection? For what reason were those batches shipped, and how many customers actually hear recalls clearly? Individual buyers do not usually receive recall notices. These dangerous items may still be concealed in home freezers. Furthermore, the impact extends beyond one's own health. When trust blossomed, I made a better decision. That assurance is undermined. People in more health-conscious communities, such as those with chronic illnesses or dietary restrictions, often feel deceived. Individuals overspend, overestimate their level of safety, and overtake risks. Thus, be careful the next time you go for a package of deep-sprouted beans in your freezer. Look for codes that are locked. Look up recall notifications in your state. Throw away any suspicious packs. Healthy labeling does not equate to safety, because the story of the deep-sprouted bean should serve as a warning that even goods marketed as healthier can be harmful. The fifth brand on our list is hiding a lot of warning signs that are difficult to spot unless you pay close attention. Iberia is number 5. Iberian cans may appear pristine, straightforward, and reliable until you open one and your stomach realizes they've been deceived. Iberia positions itself as the preferred brand for inexpensive beans that are frequently available on big box shelves and at dollar stores. Since a normal can cost between 80 cents and $1.50 at retail, it's a great choice for those on a tight budget. However, affordability can conceal risk. Customers who open cans and discover unpleasant off aromas, foaming liquid, odd coloring, and even fuzzy white film clinging to the beans have been leaving Iberia with a deluge of bad reviews in recent years. Beyond innocuous grit, some customers also observed tiny black particles or pepper-like flecks mixed in. These complaints are not isolated. Rather, they point to structural flaws in quality control. Many of these customers warned people not to eat any cans until they were inspected in their ratings on Amazon or Walmart. You don't anticipate roulette when you pay less than $1. You expect basic safety. However, in Iberia's instance, an excessive number of cans seem to be playing that game of chance, where microbiological spoiling, gas accumulation, or seal failure could cause internal pressure to rise to the point where the can bulges or leaks. In severe situations, bacteria that produce gas, such as Clostridium or spoilage yeasts, may be silently working to change the pH, produce an unpleasant odor, or even produce toxic substances. Retailers and authorities frequently brush them off as minor spoiling problems, but the risk increases for people who eat many cans in a week. Oversight is the greater problem, not individual cans. The supply chain in Iberia is extensive. It distributes through discount retailers, uses contract canneries, and sources beans from several producers. Because of this complexity, it's simple to take shortcuts, shorten sterilization cycles, speed up lines, or thin out quality samples. Recalls may never occur when complaints spike because the brand cannot formally confirm a hazard. This plausible deniability lessens accountability and buys time. Even worse, many dismiss users' reports of physical complaints like nausea, bloating, and stomach pains as unimportant. Rarely do the reports turn into formal health concerns, though. By default, the brand prevails. Many of these Iberia failures go unnoticed in a system where regulators give priority to acute outbreaks over long-term low-level spoiling. Imagine giving your loved ones a pot of chili, certain that you just purchased beans, only to discover hours later that someone has doubled over, blaming the poor meal. You would want to discover if the dependable brand itself is at blame or your cooking. That unpredictability is a veiled threat for populations that depend on shelf essentials or have fixed incomes. Therefore, if you see a can labeled Iberia Stop, check for bulging sides, smell for a yeasty or sour smell, and see if it yields a little when gently pressed. Throw away anything that doesn't look right. Don't risk your health only to save a few dollars. Customers' faith in brands is the reason this brand succeeds. Iberia is familiar, common, and inexpensive. However, that faith is misplaced much too frequently. Next, we'll shift our focus to companies that have established a reputation for being trustworthy rather than just avoiding scandal. 1. Bush's Beans. If there's one brand you can genuinely rely on when everything else seems dubious, it's Bush's Beans. However, don't assume that's true. Even the safest brands have cautionary tales of their own, and trust must be earned. Bush's can be found on supermarket shelves, during family feasts, and on the sides of barbecues. Depending on the vendor, a 28-ounce can of Bush's baked beans typically costs between $2 and $2.50. They have a long history of being trusted. However, history demonstrates that reliability does not equate to immunity. Bush was forced to issue a voluntary recall in the middle of 2017. Defective consumes that could allow leakage or bacterial growth were discovered in specific 28-ounce cans of original baked beans and brown sugar hickory country-style beans. This implies that even seemingly innocuous sealed cans may be dangerous. The risk was genuine and made clear, even if no disease was formally documented. Since then, that recall has been closed. Regulators stepped up their scrutiny, and food safety authorities notified Bush Brothers about violations of low-acid food regulations and observations of unhygienic facilities. To put it another way, production errors and oversights can happen to even well-known brands like Bush's. What keeps Bush on this safe list, then? Bush's openness about previous problems indicates that they are prepared to admit mistakes and make corrections, in contrast to companies with chemical suits, hidden allergies, or incidences of systemic pollution. When the recall was announced, they located the lot codes, told customers to throw away the impacted cans, and worked with retailers to have them taken out. Many of their non-recalled products today are from newer lines that have had seam flaws fixed. They reportedly tightened their supplier agreements, enhanced their quality control systems, and conducted more internal audits. That kind of flexible adaptability is precisely what distinguishes a brand that is worth keeping from one that should be abandoned, especially for a brand that has been around for decades. This does not, however, imply that you should put your blind faith in any Bush. Always check specifications and expiration dates for bulging, and if any recall warnings appear, confirm lot codes. Bush's, however, provides a comparatively safer route than companies enmeshed in litigation or covert contamination instances. Bush's is the brand that still leans toward reasonable faith if you have to choose between risk and reasonable faith, even if you'll never enjoy purchasing canned beans. We'll then look at a brand that makes even more compelling clean label claims, one that is based on purity rather than market supremacy. 2. Eden Foods. One name sticks out for taking a different approach in a market full with labels, health claims, and hidden dangers. Eden Foods is the name you can place close to the top of the list of reliable brands. Eden isn't the most affordable canned bean available. Depending on the retailer and area, a typical 15-ounce can of Eden organic beans typically costs between $1.80 and $2.50. However, that price doesn't feel squandered once you realize what they've given up for transparency and safety. Rather, it feels earned. Since 1999, Eden's beans have been packaged in can linings devoid of BPA, which makes them unique. They were the first to replace conventional epoxy with bisphenol A with an enamel lining made of plant-based oleoresin. This implies that every time you open a can, less harmful hormone disruptors will seep into your food. With ambiguous promises, most brands barely make it. Eden accepted the greater cost in order to make the move decades ago. They took action without waiting for public pressure. They advocated for change at a time when hardly anyone else did. However, being BPA-free is just one aspect of their tale. Eden also uses clear labeling for non-GMO sourcing and stays away from needless additives wherever possible. Their fine print labels are less hazy. They seem to do quality audits more frequently. Because sloppiness becomes dangerous when someone commits to purity, not only for customers, but also for reputation and trust. However, trust is brittle. Even clean label brands can make mistakes, as seen by previous events involving the entire industry. Being proactive is one of Eden's strengths, yet being proactive does not equate to perfection. Liner coatings are occasionally not completely disclosed in certain supply chain segments. For some high-acid foods, glass jars or other containers must occasionally be used instead of cans. These trade-offs, however, are transparent with Eden. That degree of openness is uncommon. It matters. Eden provides a route that many other brands do not for families with kids, individuals with hormone-sensitive disorders, or those who wish to lessen their chemical burden. Eden won't allay your anxieties if you feel deceived by companies who conceal allergens, permit strange items, or remain mute about chemical hazards. However, it offers you a better choice. When you have a lot of options in your pantry, keep in mind that the first name on this list that you can really trust isn't the most expensive or ostentatious. It's the company whose safety procedures are reliable enough to inspire confidence. Eden Foods isn't flawless, but it's one of the safer options when it comes to canned beans. It speaks volumes about the direction our food system is headed when something as simple as canned beans begins to seem like a gamble. Not all 5 of the names on this list ended up here by chance. They came here as a result of legitimate complaints, recalls, and warnings. Additionally, each warning is a fragment of a larger system that includes corporate silence, supply chain shortcuts, and regulatory weaknesses. You are worthy of more than a 99-cent can of mysterious muck. Despite how depressing this may sound, there are alternatives, safer names, and open procedures. Additionally, the more we back such brands, the more we encourage change across the board, because trust and who is still earning it are more important than beans. Ask yourself what's in that can, and more significantly, who's behind it the next time you're in the aisle, so that we may continue the discussions. Remember to ring the bell, like, and subscribe so that you don't miss our next in-depth independent discussion.